Hello. Hello, everyone. Let's wait for people to join us. And I'm here again every month, faithful to our meeting. Um, And we're going to be talking about standoffs. If you happen to be in one or more than one, and how to get out of them. So let's wait for a moment for all of you to join. Okay, so remember, this is Letters from Esther Live, my monthly workshop series, and whereby I want to help you reflect, act, and develop greater confidence and relational intelligence in all of your relationships. This series happens on YouTube and on Facebook Live. And if you want any more letters from Esther, visit Esther Perel. Okay. I was hearing myself in repeat mode. Something was off. So I was saying go to estherperel.com/blog and really join me every month here. And if you know of anybody who actually is in a standoff or anybody who could use some good tips for relational intelligence, just connect with them. Have them join us right now. Just let them know that you're right here with us, and hopefully they can enter the circle with us. Also, make sure you have pen and paper, so that actually, you know what, more than pen and paper, what I would love for you to have is a little notebook so that you can go back to it, so you know where you're writing your notes, so that it becomes the cumulative learning. Have a little one, call it Letters from Esther, but have a little dedicated notebook. And really, as always, submit your questions. You can do it right now in the live chat, and you can do it. When in advance, when you get the notifications for the next time. Where are we at? It's always good to do a kind of a pulse check. What's happening outside in the world around us and inside of us, and I think that the word that accompanies for me these last few weeks, and that I notice also around me, is weightiness, a sense of a kind of a lethargy, of a stifling way of being, because not much seems to be happening and everybody's waiting. Are the schools going to open? Is the office going to go back? Are we going to stay online? Do I need to make larger lifestyle changes? How much can I tolerate talking about COVID? Can we talk about anything else? Does anybody have something different to say about this whole thing? And basically the reality is that the new normal is no longer new. But we still have to deal with the feelings and the consequences of this time. Some of us call it a crisis, some of us call it a psychosis almost, some of us call it a collective panic, some of us call it a complete social upheaval. But everyone seems to agree that there's some malaise going on that we are all a part of. And when we are in this kind of a generalized malaise, our opinions and our coping styles become more extreme, our points of view become more divisive, our fights can get out of control, and we end up quite often in our relationships upset, angry, isolated. And I think the real word we hear a lot these days is exhausted, just plain exhausted. So do me a favor very quickly. Any of you who know what I'm talking about, just let me know in the chat box, so I have some sense as to what your pulse check is. Go ahead, just let me know, and then I'm going to get a moment to look at this. I want to have a sense of where you are at as I meet you today. you know. All these dynamics lead to the propensity of relationship standoffs, the fights that arise from deep divisiveness caused by seemingly irresolvable impasses. And my source for a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today, about impasses in relationships, about what has often been called the vulnerability cycle, is my dear friend and colleague, Michelle Schenkman. So go to the source as well so that you can see where I learn before I want you to learn with me. You know, but what are we going to talk about is kind of how are impasses in relationships formed? Where do they come from? Why does this happen? It's frustrating to everybody, and yet they repeat, or we repeat them, and we become doggedly entrenched in them. How do they get maintained? And how do we get out of these stalemates? What can we do? What is helpful in moments like that? And yes, at this moment, a lot of the stalemates are related to the current crisis. But it's not just we have a difference of opinion. That's not a stalemate. A stalemate is actually really not about the content. We agree to disagree. We have different views. A stalemate is how each person elicits a reaction in the other person that actually reinforces their defensiveness, which then reinforces the rigidity of our behavior, and we can't get out of that. The stalemate is the form, it's the dance. And once people have a form, they can actually apply it to a variety of different topics. It's not the topic that determines the stalemate. It's not because we disagree about if we should go out and see more than 2 people at a time or not. This is really not. It's very, very important. So, you know, a lot of these situations right now are stiffening the pre-existing issues that we've had in the relationships. You know, that's we need to normalize this as well. This is not like there's a problem about that, but it can become really problematic. You know, have you told me a little bit? What are some of the things that I can't read you, but I'm sure you are answering. I'm so tired of feeling like I'm waiting for something to happen, something to change, and it doesn't boredom. Yeah. You know, the way I've actually, to use my language, the dimension that is really missing for many of us at this moment is the erotic dimension. It's the dimension that leads us to curiosity, exploration, discovery, aliveness, energy. And that portion of our life is curtailed because we are meant not to go out, not to be with strangers, not to go in unknown situations, not to, you know, the only surprise somehow seems to be the possibility of getting sick or making someone else sick. That's where the unknown lies, rather than the unknown as being this area of exploration that we strive on, new people, new places, new experiences that maintains us energized and alive and vibrant and radiant and all of that, you know. So I think that it's, for once, the word boredom actually takes on that full meaning, a sense of steadiness, you know, stifled, anchored like that, stable. Everything is about maintaining stability. And it is really what this is demanding from us. But it is also taxing. And after months of this, it's really taxing. You know, fearful, exhausted, feeling stagnant. Stagnation is very good. Restlessness is a stagnation too, you know. Been in the house with the husband and the kids for 6 months and no end in sight. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that we don't know when this will change. And so it's really about, you know, constantly regulating ourselves back, reminding ourselves, allowing ourselves to do the kvetching, the art of complaining that I've written about so much and talked with you about, really. And then at the same time, you know, making sure that we find small areas of exploration. In my case, you know, I tend to travel. I tend to leave, to go abroad, to go to my other homes, to speak my other languages. So my exploration is always on the outside. My partner's exploration is much more on the inside. It's about reading, it's about thinking, reflecting, painting. And man, it is, in our normal times, we manage to have his do his and mine, and I do mine. And at this moment, it's much more difficult because I don't find that kind of recharge necessarily by staying put. The first thing I do when I want energy is move, which is in physics terms, actually not illogical, you know, but not everybody lives like me. So if I ask you, think of a particular stalemate in your life at this moment, what would it be? Either with a partner, a parent, a sibling, a colleague, a friend. Pick one, a thing that just circles around and around, and each one says to the other, if you did it differently, if you changed, you're making me that dance, in which every single person basically is reinforcing the other person. That's the main thing you really want to understand about stalemates. Um, but there are also stalemates about very complicated questions at this point that don't have a simple answer. It's not about who should do the dishes. It's about, should we move our parents to the nursing home? Should we even go to visit them? Should we bring them to be with us? Should we let our kids go out and play with others? What shall I do when my closest friends don't want their kids to come and play with our kid because we have had completely different responses to confinement and stuff like that. It's not 2 + 2 is 4. So a lot of these situations really are dilemmas more than problems to solve. They really are dilemmas that we need to manage. So write to me in the comment box for a second. What are some of the stalemates that you're dealing with? Recurrent conversations that elicit defensiveness on both sides. My husband brings up old arguments that we've never resolved. When we have new argument, always a circles, chores in the house, role dispute. I always do, you never do. That's one. Why is it my job to do this? Whoever said that, that's what would be our arrangement. The resentment, it's not it. And then here's the stalemate. When you talk about the chore, in a split second, the dishes, the laundry, the wash, whatever it is, becomes a symbol of my deprivation, of all the stuff that I've done for you all the years, or of all the stuff that you've never done for me all the years, or of all the years in my childhood that I used to do all of this and nobody ever recognized it. The smallest item will trigger the underlying issue that is really evoked by this item. And from this place of vulnerability, of that underlying issue, I will now respond. I feel unseen. I feel put upon. I feel unappreciated. I feel abandoned. I feel unjustly treated. I feel your unfairness. I feel I can never please you. And you hear the resonance of these sentences, and you know that in a stalemate like that, the past and the present meet immediately. It's like old scripts get attached to the situation in the moment. You know what I'm saying? My brother and I are estranged. His choice always felt so sad, but all of this makes it even worse and so futile. Right. It's like, if we never know if we're going to see each other again, now what? How best to support our kid during the pandemic, finances, picking up around the house, politics, how social or not to be at this moment. That's it. We're in the same space, people. So keep yours, because you're going to think about it as you hear me describe some of the features of the stalemate, right? Write it down for yourself. And let's look at the slide as well, so you can actually take a screenshot of it and have it available for you. These are the prompts, right? So what is the particular, what about this incident is so important for me? Like, when you did not show up on time, when you did not choose to speak with my parent on the call, when you leave all of the mess to me, what is it that matters about this thing? It's not because I always do it. It's because you take me for granted. It's because I don't feel appreciated. It's because I have felt like I was a maid all my life growing up. It's because I chose you to finally be able to rely on someone, and here I am, one more person relying on me. What is the underlying? To go and translate that for yourself. What is one thing that I notice myself doing each time? Well, I just gave you one. One is that when the thing happens in the moment, I bring it back to the larger issue, to the big feeling that lives underneath this, and I extrapolate, I catastrophize, I make it an always or a never, that kind of thing, right? How long have I been doing this? Is this recent? I was talking with people earlier, and it came up very soon in the relationship. And so when that stuff emerges early on, and not that all of you are early relationships, but when it emerges early on, you know that it's touching on something old. You know that there is an echo chamber that has just been activated with old feelings about this. And this particular situation is just igniting the whole thing. And now imagine that you are a stranger on a balcony and you're looking down and you're looking at these two people, which is you and your partner, or you and your sibling, you and your friend. What do you notice is happening between these two people? And imagine that you don't even understand what they say, so that you don't even know the language, but you're watching the interaction. You're watching, for example, one person doing this and maximizing and being the more voluminous one, and you're watching the other one doing that. The eyes up, the minimizer, the one who's trying to get away from, who needs space, who's trying to regulate by cutting the eye contact, the pursuer, the distancer, the maximizer, the minimizer, the exploder, the imploder. These are images, these are not identities. Let's be very, very clear, okay? But what do you see is the dance between these two people. That is the part that is very important here, is that you really see it. You see it as a dance, If I go to the question of what makes these stalemates so intense. And I'm going to go back to the work of Michelle Schenkman here, because she really named that stalemate by calling it a vulnerability cycle. It's a very kind way to looking at how one person's vulnerability gets triggered, to which they then respond from a place of survival strategy, a defense, a coping style. When I used to feel unappreciated, when I used to feel like I have to do everything, when I used to, at home most likely, I learned never to ask anymore. I learned to close off and go take care of myself on my own and never to be found. So I learned this. And when I do this, the other person who has been the one that knocks at the door and learned actually to respond differently is going to respond from their survival strategy. And now we have a dance between two people's coping styles, rather than two people freely able to flexibly decide, what do I want to do with this situation? An impasse, a standoff, is a trap or an entrapment in which one feels that you repeat the same thing hoping that this time it will have an effect, but in fact the thing is kind of having a life of its own. So how do these recurrent impasses in our relationships relate to our vulnerabilities and our insecurities? Ask yourself that. When I get into that discussion with my husband about the chores and the roles, what gets evoked for me? What gets evoked for him or her? Two partners, doesn't matter, orientation here. That's the first question. What gets evoked in me? Not in this moment. What does it trigger in me? What does it bring up for me? What is the underlying story, feeling, insecurity, And when I feel that kind of insecurity, what is my defensive response? When I feel attacked, when I feel misjudged, when I am misunderstood, when I feel blamed, when what do I do? That's the second thing. You can literally trace yourself in this impasse. The standoff is a sequence of situations, of behaviors and responses, action and reaction. And then when I respond the way I'm used to responding when I feel misjudged, which is I correct the facts. It wasn't 30 days, it was 25 days. It wasn't 4 o'clock, it was 2:30. It wasn't the morning, it was the evening, as if this is going to change the story, right? I'm going to do the fine edit here. Then you feel like there is, for example, never room for your feelings. Like you always have to justify them, like everybody is waiting to see, to delegitimize, your experience. And then when you feel that your experience is delegitimized, what do you do? And how does one person set the other one up? How does the chain of defensiveness get activated? How does each one mutually reinforce the position of the other? This is the interesting thing in a stalemate, is that each person is actually doing something that is setting the other one up to react the way they do. It's not just that's who they are, And what is the collapse there between the past and the present? When you are cold to me, I feel so alone. When I feel alone, I'm reminded of how responsible I was at home, attending to everybody else. When I'm reminded of that, I interpret certain things that you do as in you are leaving me on the side. You're not attending to me. And that's when the cycle starts. When you tell me that you're going to take my guitar without asking, and I feel that you're taking me for granted, or that you're going to come and stay at my place without asking, and I feel like you're just using my stuff as if it's yours, and I feel like all what I do for you and you never thank me, which of course probably is not fully true, but it evokes that whole thing. This is where I want you to not have the finger pointing this way, but to actually turn it on you. Ask yourself the question, really. It changes the entire communication, because then you could say, when this happens, this is what goes on for me, rather than this is what you're doing to me. It's when you do this, I experience that. That is really the break, one of the essential breaks in the structure, in the rigidity of the structure of impasse. How do we handle, I'm going to come to the questions in just a minute, I think I've said it, but I'm going to repeat it one more time. The impasse is not about the issue. What makes the impasse is the form of the communication, the inability to communicate, or the escalation. One of the most classic stalemates that we are all experiencing at this moment, and this may actually come in the example about, should the kids go play with others that I saw on the list here, or should we go play with others, is the way that we polarize. So it looks like one says the kids should go play, or we should have a gathering, or we should have a dinner. Translate this to your specific situation. And the other one says, I don't think it's a good idea. And now it becomes, you don't think, you're not safe. And the other one says, you're paranoid, you're so scared all the time, you're completely deluded. And in a split second, people went from a situation of playing and dating and a date and a play date and a dinner to you're deluded and you're paranoid. I mean, this goes super fast, right? This is an impasse. It goes super fast, a standoff like that. And then it's as if only one of us cares about our safety and the other one really would like to destroy us. Really? This is not the case. We split the ambivalence in situations like this, and it becomes you are the voice of safety and you are the voice of risk and danger. But that's not true. Both people want both. But what happens when we split the ambivalence is that one person takes on one portion of the dilemma and the other person represents the other side of the dilemma, as if it's an either or, when in fact both people want both. This you can begin to look at, as if only one person wants a clean house because one says, let's just sit down and stop it and take a break for a moment. So in all of these situations, you will see that each person gets aside a portion of the dilemma. And most of these dilemmas are a both end because there is no real answer. It is going to be a little bit of each, I can give you so many examples about splitting the ambivalence, but I want to keep time for our questions. I think what's really important, and particularly in this moment, in the standoffs, is that a lot of the things we're arguing about, it's not 2 + 2 is 4. It's not what Ron Heifetz calls a technical challenge with a clear, easy answer. It's actually, and I think it's a beautiful word, an adaptive challenge. We are surrounded by adaptive challenges in this moment, in which there is no easy answer. There is no known procedure to move forward. And I really like it. This is Ron Heifetz at the Kennedy School. I love this concept of an adaptive challenge. It means that there is no right and wrong. And that is going to invite us to really look at the way we deal with these standoffs in a very different way. Because typically what happens in our standoffs is that there are three main dances: fight, 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 flight, and flight, flight. Jim, jim, jim. This is it. This is basically it. We go at it, we draw from each other, or one person pursues, wants to talk, and the other one doesn't know how far to move away so that they can eschew the conflict. This is the three dances, but there's a better way. And I really love the work of Barry Johnson, of polarity management. Because what happens is when we polarize, when we're in that stalemate, when I say you always, you never, and you tell me you always, you never, we completely divide it like this. If you take a piece of paper, right now, I just did this, okay? So I scratched the cross. And let's say going out, kids, something like this. And in this quadrant, it's about going out, okay? And this one is about staying in. Let's just do it very simple like this: staying in and going out. Typically, one of you says, do this, the other one says, do that. I hope I'm in front of the camera, okay? Like this. But if instead of this person trying to move that one to this side, you go like, because what happens is that if I only speak about the positive side of my point of view, then you do the same thing. And then you actually emphasize all the negative sides of my point of view, and I will emphasize all the negative sides of your point of view. Instead of me trying to get you to come here, I first go here. I go to what are the weak parts of my point of view. Basically, I'm going to say the things that you would be saying. If we stay in, we're really going to choke on ourselves. We're not going to get enough fresh air. We're not going to get energy. We lack the social contact. The kids are not going to get socialized properly. There's a long list of reasons why not to stay inside that you must be able to hold as well, because in a polarity management, it's about navigating the polarity. It's the fact that both ends are relevant issues. And after you have talked about the weakness of your position, you're going to talk about the strength of the other person's position, which is also what they've been saying all along. The good things about going out, why it's important, why it matters. Once you have done that, you have basically repeated what the other person usually keeps repeating, so that you have freed them up to be able to finally say something else. And then only you're going to go and talk about what is the positive of your position. So that you're going in, instead of going this way, you're going here, and then here, and then here, and then back to you. You follow this? The liability of your position, the positive of the other position, the liability of your position, of the other position, and then the positive. That is the polarity management. You basically need to be able to let the other person know that you see what they see may be missing in what you're standing for, that you have a full picture, that you have the both ends. At that moment, you have a discussion about the complexity of the matter. So, that is a lot more flexible, useful, adaptive than talking about how unbending and narrow-minded the other one is, or how they lack empathy, or how maddeningly frustrating that they can be. It's also a lot more effective than you never do, and you're crazy, and I always, and all of those things. So breaking the stalemates starts by giving validity to the story, the experience, the feelings of the other person, rather than the defensive reclaiming of what you want or what you feel or what you have said 1,000 times. Say what the other person has been trying to say, because then the other person also feels heard. Then say, what you don't say, but what you must be feeling inside if you have a broader view on things, the dilemma, the conflict that you have, rather than spout the certainty. And then go to the other side. Okay, let me take a quick sense here of what you're all asking me. How do we handle conflict when compromise is not an option? I need more specificity probably. Let me get a few. How do I express my needs and limits when a situation escalates? What do we do when our stalemates repeat? How do we move forward? That is the nature of stalemates, is that they repeat. So the first thing, I'm going to start with this one because it kind of connects with the other. The first thing you do is, let's not do this. If we're going to have this conversation like that one more time, we're both going to be defeated, depleted, exhausted, and we're going to feel constantly that instead of getting closer, we're further apart. We're not doing this well. I don't know what we should do, but I know that if we do what we do now, we're going to have another miserable evening. Stop it. Stop it. Time out. And then you'll see. Maybe you actually will go in your room and write a note and just say, and then when you write, it's not about writing what you have said 1,000 times. Let me write you what I think you've been trying to tell me. That's a different way. It's the same thing as the polarity management. Go to the other side and let the person know that you got something of what they're saying, and don't just go for the one thing you don't agree with. Go with what they say that you think is plausible, has validity. That's you can do in writing, that you can do in talking. But if the stalemate repeats, stop it and say, we're going to stop it because we need to save our relationship. It's going to erode and eat at us if we don't do that. What do you think about writing to start? Yes, but I would start by writing not what you would otherwise say. I would say I'm writing because I've been thinking about, is there a better way for us to start this conversation, which I know we have both tried and it hasn't been good. We keep escalating and we leave both of us, not just I, defeated. So I was wondering if there is a way that I could write that also shows you more of the nuances of what I'm actually thinking. If you're going to write a same version of what you would say, forget it, because the stance is the same and therefore the dance will be the same, as my friend Terry Real calls it. It's really, you want to show something different in the writing. That's, you're using another means to create a different text. You're not just using another means to say the same thing. But yes, I love the writing. I am a big proponent of writing. And I sometimes say write by hand. I say throw the first version out, because the first version will often include the blame and the accusations, and I'm the victim and you're the perpetrator and all of that stuff. So, and sometimes it's to say, I know I've been making a big deal about that, and you probably think that that's all I think about. And I thought maybe I should actually start the letter by telling you the things that I've really appreciated lately. I know that we've been at each other and bickering away, but, I also know that I would not have wanted to do this confinement alone. I wouldn't have wanted to live this period without you. I still appreciate a great deal of what you do, even when sometimes I harp on you for all the stuff that you don't do. And I hope that you see all the things I do too, even though lately we've just focused on the negative, both of us, all the time, and we've become a real critical bunch, constantly picking and pointing fingers. That's a different way of starting the letter. So I want to try to do it differently. I hope you see me, and I want to tell you I see you, what I do, etc., etc. What is the best way to stop and reset when a conversation is going south? You stop and you say, we're not doing this well. I don't think we're going to get to anything, and I don't think you feel that we're getting to anything. I think we should really be caring for the relationship at this moment. If we do this together, we will harm the relationship. And let's not do that. I have no idea at this point how to do it better. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to go listen to some music. I'm going to go play some music. I'm going to go cook something. Hopefully it's not just I'm going to go get 5 drinks, but maybe one. And stop and then say, we are not doing this well. We are stuck. Let's see how we can do this better, but let's not repeat ourselves one more time. You really need to be able to tell that voice inside of you that says, if you do it one more time, if I explain it this way, you're finally going to get it, and I'm going to get through you. You're not. So it's very difficult to say, we're off track, and then somebody may say, but I'm not finished. And then you say, I can't hear you right now, and I'm not going to be able to give you the kind of attention and the kind of warmth or care or ear that you need. And so I'm going to put a stop because I'm protecting us. That's the paradox here, is I'm protecting us by doing this. I'm not just doing a power maneuver, right? How do you initiate this conversation without sounding like a know-it-all? You just say, look, I don't know. I just know that we need something different. Are you willing to try with me? We can continue this kind of fighting, but I think we both hate it. And it has to be a both. What happens in polarized conversations is that everybody talks about I and you. The you is the bad stuff and the I is usually the better stuff, So you don't say, this is what I suggest we do. You just say, are you open to this? I mean, look, I don't, it's not like I have an idea that this is going to work, but I do know what isn't working, and we should absolutely stop what doesn't work. And if the other person comes back and blames you for it and starts to tell you, yeah, of course we're stuck because of you, then you just say, I think that's part of the thing. I mean, I can do that too, but we're just going to hurt each other. And instead of saying, that hurts, we're just going to fire back. So that's the other way you stop this sometimes, is somebody fires at you, and instead of firing back, you just say, that hurts. And that's it. You don't continue the conversation. That will actually really redirect it in a big way. What if my partner isn't interested in seeking resolution? You're not seeking resolution. You're seeking to preserve the connection. You're seeking to preserve the sense that both of you care about the other, about each other, about the relationship, rather than what happens when there is no resolution is not about, are we going out and are the kids going to play? It ends up being, you don't care, or I'm alone, or I'm misunderstood, or this is so frustrating, or I can never please you, or you're so critical. That's what people are left with. It's not the resolution of the item itself. Be very, very clear about that. What if the standoff is just fundamentally different views on something? That is not the standoff. The standoff, you may have fundamentally different views on something. People have lived together with complete different belief systems about God, about death, about birth, about abortion, about lots of very fundamental different things. But they basically said, I don't believe in nothing. I'm a profound atheist, and my partner has a complete different view of the world, of where we come from and where we go. And they coexist. It's not the difference of opinion that creates the stalemate. That's what's really interesting. When people understand that, they can be very creative in coming up with all kinds of things. One person just doesn't want to travel ever, or doesn't want to go and do certain things, and the other one says, I'm going to go do it with other people. I really wish we did it together. It's a real loss. But I have lots of other things that we share, and it's a balance. That's the balance, So very careful. It's not about the particular thing. What if one person is doing the polarity management, but the other doesn't? How will this help us? These are very stalemate kind of questions. I'm doing it, but you don't. You have to get buy-in first, really. Yeah. But I will tell you something. If you do it really, and you repeat it, and you say, look, I completely understand why you're scared. I completely understand why you don't want to do this. And I think it's with this and this. Do I get it? Do I understand what you're really saying to me? If the other person 5 times later still comes back at you, then you have a real issue. Then you may need to say, it's really interesting. I give you a present and you never open it. That's really what's happening here. I tell you, I hear you, I see you, but you can't receive it. And then that becomes the issue. I'm telling you, I hear what you're saying, but you continue to repeat the same thing, because it's like you're not hearing me hearing you, basically. And then probably at some point you want some professional help. I mean, there's a limit to everything we can do alone. I got professional help. Everybody needs sometimes a third person who is impartial there and watches this from that balcony and says, here is what I see you do. I'm dealing with a narcissistic mom who becomes verbally abusive and gaslights as a coping mechanism. It's worse. How do I deal with that? How do you deal with gaslighting? And I don't know what your mom really says, but I think that's a very nice thing sometimes. If it was pre-COVID and you could still kiss your mom, I would have gone, I would have kissed her in the neck, and I would have said, Mom, I thank you for always trying to make me be a better person. You really don't like to settle for the status quo. You just want things to be better and different. I really appreciate that. Okay. What I'm saying to you is, in a situation like that, you don't go in there with earnestness. You manage it by disengaging and by bringing in something that helps you not get wounded, defeated, sidetracked, etc. So I like I like humor. You've heard me many times say that. You really, you could say you're so critical, or you could say, I appreciate your sense of perfection. And then what are you talking about? And then you just say, no, I really do. I mean, really, this is something I've learned from you, is not to take things the way they are, but always want them to be better. Try that. I promise you, it will change something fundamentally. Because what it changes is not your mom. Your mom's going to stay the same thing, but your experience of your mom will change. Because instead of doing this, you will just simply say, I see what you do, but it's not cutting me. This is for all of this behavior. I would say the same thing. It's about learning. It's not that you don't take it personally. You basically leave it with the other person. You say, I see what you do that is about you, and it's unpleasant, but it's not hurting me every time. What if they will not engage at all? You really need, if you have a stonewalling person, if you have a person who withdraws or shuts down, that is part of what happens in the stalemate. And you have to say, look, talk to me. I mean, this is where therapy does actually really become useful, or a therapy like question. It's kind of, or listening to any of the podcast episodes, where I actually just had a very, very relevant one that's called It's Hard to Live with a Saint, where she can do no right and he can do no wrong. But you can see, how she's exploding. And yes, she comes from that story, but he does just a little subtle thing that ignites her to explode. But then he says she's impossible. He doesn't see the piece he does. And that's where you want to have somebody who really sees the sequence, so that you tell your partner, you must have really had good reasons to shut down like this. But when you do it with me, it creates this whole other situation. And that one is a good one to put in writing. But if you have somebody who shuts down, you probably have someone who also will perceive criticism very quickly. And so it's very subtle, you have to coach it. And then sometimes you say, I'm tired of doing that. Why do I have to protect and be, you be all, silky? And that's where sometimes an outsider will help quite a bit, if they think, how do you get someone to reflect? We have 2 minutes, people. This is amazing questions. To reflect on actions if they think that they've done nothing wrong and can do no wrong, right? It's like, then that's the issue. I mean, it's like, some people have been quite criticized to such a degree that they can't hear you say that they've done something poor without them hearing you saying you are poor. And so they do the same to you, of course. They can't accept that they can be flawed and still be okay. So they defend against everything you say because they are flawless. And flawless people are deeply insecure people. Confident people have the ability to see themselves as flawed and still hold themselves in high regard. It's very, very important. So this is the kind of stuff that is much more difficult to just do with little tricks. You need somebody who is capable of saying, it's very hard for me to accept any criticism. I instantly stiffen up, I tighten, I get angry, I get resentful, I get defensive. And how you get to that with your partner is a different story. What if the nature of a relationship, he wants to keep it once a week casual and I want it more serious? That is not the standoff. You see, this is where you keep it on the subject. The standoff is that he takes you wanting it more serious as you're being needy or dependent or clingy or too fast or insecure, and that you see his wanting it to keep it once a week as aloof and non-committal and maybe not loving you enough. It's the interpretation, it's the emotional experience of these two stances that becomes the stalemate, you know, rather than we have different ages, we're on different rhythms, we have had different histories of relationships. You know, I may not like it that he only wants to see me weekly, or I may not like it that she would like us to meet every 3 times, but how do I interpret this? She's suffocating. She's, you know, she's putting a noose around my neck. He's making me feel all alone. I feel deserted all the time. I feel like he's just using me. I feel like he's just making fun of me. This is the conversation. When you say that, this is what it brings up in me. When you say that, this is what it brings up in me. The stalemate is how these two experiences underneath are locking in with each other. That's the stalemate, not the fact that you may be at different set of expectations about the relationship. People, I think we are arriving at our time, but this is like a seminar. This is not just an online workshop. These are incredible questions, and A, they're real, B, they're honest, C, they often imply you. They don't just say, you know, the other one is at fault. It's kind of, what can I do? Help me, help them. And this is great. So we're going to continue these conversations. You are going to write as much as you can in your little notebooks. And, you know, join me on Letters from Esther, on the blog, on the letters themselves, on Facebook, and YouTube. And be well. And I'll see you in a month here, but I can see you in many other places in between. And here's the thing. If you find this workshop helpful, consider re-watching it with the person with whom you're having the stalemate with. You know, and just say, this woman, she made me think about me. Don't say, you should watch this. She's got some really good stuff to say about what you're doing wrong. Right? So really just say, I think she had some things to say that could be helpful to us. At least I found some things helpful to me. Now, listen, some of you will have partners who will say, yeah, right, damn right. You need to change. I'm glad you found some good use about input about what you need to do different. And then you kind of want to say, you know, they think they're the saint. That's the living with the saint. That's on where should we begin this season. But on the other end, it doesn't matter. If you can alone change the dance, get yourself out of the stalemate, do it, even if you have to do it by yourself, because it's your enlightened self-interest. It doesn't matter if you did more. If you did good, you'll still enjoy having done that. So let me know what happens when you watch it with your person with whom you're having the stalemate, or give it to them and say, watch it with me, even though we're not here together. All right? See you next month, and be well.